My name is Ken, Sales and Integrations here at Staking Rewards, and I'll be your moderator for today's AMA. And for everyone watching, we are live right now, so at any time, please feel free to add your questions for our guests in the chat section of this live stream. And we do have some wonderful guests with us here today. So starting with the Fuse side, we have Robert Miller, who is the Marcom Director at Fuse, and we have Rob Brown, who is the lead at Fuse Prime. Okay, and then from the Mantra DAO side, we have Jay, who is the staking and infrastructure lead in operations at Mantra DAO. And all right, guys, so starting with Robert, could you just please briefly introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about how you got started, how you get involved with this industry, and give us some insights into your roles.
Yeah, so I've been involved in, it's actually been 8 years, I've realized. Is the sound okay, by the way? I think it is. It's actually been 8 years since I got involved with Bitcoin. I realized the other day, around 8 years, around this time, sort of 2014, that I first got involved with crypto. So it's been a while now. Didn't get involved heavily into the space until 2016, seeing the sort of when Ethereum split and seeing the sort of political and financial and economic ramifications of that, and realizing how big crypto was. And then got heavily involved with a project in 2017 with a fintech project that had a sort of crypto element to it, basically. And then spent some time working with Cointelegraph in late 2018 and 2019, traveled the world and went to lots of conferences and networked a lot. And I've now been with Fuse for nearly 2 years. I've been working with Mark and the team for nearly 2 years now on Fuse Network. And my main focus is marketing, but I'm a bit of a generalist. I've been in the trenches basically with the founding team since the start. So since we started going sort of more public with our brand and whatnot. So I'm more of a generalist, but my main focus is on marketing.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. And how about you, Rob?
Yeah, that was me with the feedback. Sorry about that. So yeah, my background's in operations in data warehousing. So I had a kind of history in data warehousing. And around about 2017, 2018, the project was coming to an end and I was looking for kind of the next opportunity, next kind of thing to get into. And I've always been interested in kind of applied technology. So not just kind of coding and things like that, but how do you actually apply technology? How do you make use of it? And that's kind of my interest from like data warehousing. How do we actually make use of data? What do we do with it? How can we analyze it and kind of make it into kind of a useful business tool? And I've always also been interested in kind of local economies and supporting small businesses and things like that. And so I thought, and I kind of came across kind of the crypto sphere again. I'd seen it back in the early days of Bitcoin, and I looked at it and I thought, oh man, this is too complex. Private key this and all this, mining stuff. Like, oh man, I can't come into this yet. I'm going to kind of wait a while, and I'm sure it's going to be important, but it's too complex for me now. So went into kind of other areas of software. But I came back into it in that kind of 2018 kind of pump. I thought, okay, something's happening here. So come back into the kind of field and have a look around. And how do you apply it? What's out there that's actually real world, usable kind of ideas and services. And so I came across Kulu, which was Mark Smargan's kind of previous company, who were looking at doing local community currencies. And I got involved with them and tried to develop a business plan. We worked out how to make this kind of work. Legislation got in the way, so couldn't get kind of legislation to work for blockchain crypto technology. And so what happened was Mark span out from Kulu to create Fuse, and I stayed on with the project, and I was one of the first validators on Fuse Network. And I've been with the project kind of from the very beginning, really. So over time, I've, I suppose, grown the validating side, and also very involved with the community, very much from the beginning. Also the tech team as well. So just the development of the network, the ideas that were coming up, because it was a completely new blockchain. So like, how do you grow this blockchain? How do you what things do you put in place to grow in the right direction? So those types of things we were talking about and developing. And as Fuse has grown, I've we've started the FuseDAO, which is I'm one of the lead members on that, which is funded by the foundation, and we assign grants to projects who are wanting to join Fuse and build on Fuse. Just very kind of heavily involved in the community, supporting projects which are wanting to deploy on Fuse. I suppose probably kind of a key face on there. So
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Rob. And from one of the first validators on Fuse to one of the more recent validators on Fuse, we have Jay from Mantra DAO.
Thanks so much, Ken. And just to give a little bit of a background about my entry into crypto, it's fairly recent compared to both Rob and Robert. I've only been in the space when sort of the 2018 bubble burst, which is when I realized, okay, there may be some bubble related to this activity, but there are also some really solid builders and some really intelligent people out here. And that's where the values of crypto and the decentralization is what brought me into the space. And I started out fairly recently working with an institutional custodian, wherein I understand that keys can be a little difficult, especially for people from traditional finance. So how do we get around doing that? And how do we provide them with an avenue of securing their keys and being able to operate within this ecosystem? That was my entry into crypto. And then with Mantra DAO, when I met some of the founders out here just 2 weeks after they did their entire launch, came across the idea that while there is an entire DeFi ecosystem that we're building out, crypto isn't DeFi itself, and Web3 isn't DeFi itself. It's also the infrastructure layer. And that is what really gets me excited, because one of the areas that I worked in prior to crypto was in microfinance. And one of the greatest areas of getting access to people was the operational bloat. But if you have smart contract, you eliminate that entire process. So that is where my entire entry into this ecosystem came in. And similar to Robert, I'm sort of a generalist. I started out in operations, moved more towards the tech and product side, and got more involved in various other aspects, and just started helping out wherever I could. A lot of it comes down to just educating myself and the other people that I work with. So that was my entry into crypto, and I see that this space is growing pretty intensely, and we're doing some really cool stuff. One of the more recent chains that we've been working on, not necessarily recent, but has been with Fuse since December 2020. So while we may be like a newer chain and not as experienced as a validator as Rob, we're still here for the long term, and we're not going anywhere.
That's awesome. And thank you for all the intros, guys. For everyone watching, this is our panel. So if you have questions for them, feel free to, again, enter your questions in the chat, and we'll be sure to ask during the episode of the AMA here today. We will be talking about staking Fuse with Mantra DAO, of course, the Mantra DAO ecosystem in general, potentially liquid staking on Fuse and sustainable APYs, the impacts of the ETH2 upgrade, and then, of course, Fuse tokenomics. So let's get right into these AMA questions, guys. And to start us off, Mr. Rob Brown, Mr. Fuse Prime, could you just give us some insights into how dPOS works on Fuse?
So first of all, I'm probably not going to cover the whole kind of range of things, the tech side of things. So if people are interested, they can go to the Fuse docs, which is docs.fuse.io. And everything is kind of described in there. So as a delegated proof of stake network, we run a maximum of 100 validators. So that's the maximum that can be active at one time. To have an active validator, you need to have 100,000 Fuse staked on that validator. And being proof of stake, the hardware requirements, one of the major benefits are the low hardware requirements. So compared with proof of work, where you need a serious computing power to mine, on Fuse, we're looking at probably a small $30 a month VPS, 2-core, 4 gigabytes, and a 100 gigabyte disk. It's a really low energy requirement, hardware requirements. One of the major benefits of kind of Fuse network and proof of stake networks is they're very environmentally friendly. It's a big thing now. There's been lots of dialogue about proof of work being, the amount of energy is being used. So as a proof of stake network, very environmentally friendly, very low overheads, and it actually aids decentralization because you don't need massive amounts of resources to come on board and be a validator. So it's open to most people. So validators, as a kind of tech thing, we run on a 5-second block time. We've got a 48-hour, 2-day epoch time. And an epoch time is essentially when network events happen. So not the transactions, but actually network events. So such as new validators come on board, people can take their nodes offline kind of upgrade. So when votes go ahead, they happen within the kind of time frame of epochs as well. So there's 48-hour periods. So I suppose there's two things to think about. So first of all, there's validators. So what's a validator? And then there's delegation. So what is delegation? Okay. So a validator has more responsibility on the network. So your stake is there to secure the network, and it's also the thing you put at risk if you are a bad actor. So if you're a bad actor on a network, on a proof of stake network, your funds are at risk. So on ETH2, which we'll come on to, they stake 32 ETH, and they can lose it all if they're a bad actor. We have similar things on Fuse where you can't lose your Fuse, but your node will get jailed. You go into jail, and if you're in jail, you're not mining anything, so you're not making rewards. So it's a slightly not so harsh, but there are these consequences if you're a validator. For most users, delegating is a thing that they'll do, which is they will simply choose a validator to submit to stake on. Yeah, so that's delegation, is staking with a validator that you don't own. And there's no risk with that. So on Fuse, you can delegate to any validator you want. There's a staking UI, staking.fuse.io. If you've got Fuse in your wallet, you simply just stake, and you can unstake straight away. There's no bonding period or anything like that. So it's incredibly attractive for any holders of Fuse to get an APR, get a return on their Fuse that they're holding with no risk whatsoever. You don't stake with a validator, you stake on the consensus contract, which means your funds are on the consensus contract. So if those validators disappear to go offline, you can still get your funds out. There's no risk whatsoever. So it's very, very attractive. And it's one of the great things about the proof of stake networks. That you have this ability to earn a return on your funds in a very low risk way. So that's great about that. Anything else about?
Maybe just a follow-up question on not having an unbonding period. A lot of other proof of stake networks have this unbonding period. It's common to see anywhere between 14, 21, 28 days or more for unbonding. Do you think that actually makes the network maybe outflow price stability more volatile, not having this bonding period?
So it's been discussed. So validators do have a bonding period of 1 epoch. So there's some stability there. So that means that we have a kind of a fundamental resource within the validator network itself and the validators. In terms of delegators, there isn't an unbonding period at the moment, but that we're probably going to implement one, which will be 2 days. 48 hours, so it'll be 1 epoch. I think there are pros and cons. I mean, Fuse is a small network. It's very dynamic. People move funds around fairly frequently. Back into staking, back out again. And I think that's an attractive part of it. But I do agree, you do need that kind of stability and some locking at the fundamental layer to keep the blockchain secure. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. There might be a proposal already concerning an unbonding period. There's likely another one that's going to come up, and we're looking for engagement on that from the community. We have seen a lot of stability nonetheless. We're around 50% participation, and all through the recent sort of volatility in the markets, it's stayed around that level. So there's currently around, I think, 70 million Fuse staked. And it's sort of stayed around that area during all the volatility we've seen, despite the fact that people can, in fact, they can unstake and stake whenever they like. So it's interesting to see.
I think that also, a lot of the validators are heavily invested in terms of the network. They're committed to it. I've been committed to it, and so we're not looking to kind of come in and out of the whole network. We're here for the long term, and there's a really solid core of the community that are like that. And so there's that. That's why we don't see the kind of the volatility in staking profile. I think we're about 77 million now.
And I think that's definitely one of the benefits to having a network. Rob's been here since the start, and he's seen the network stabilize, I think, during the first year in particular, And there's been organic growth essentially in the way that the validators have come in. So you'll see names. You can see names on the validators. You'll see various different VCs that have been involved with Fuse Network since 2020. You'll see people like Rob, of course, who have been heavily involved in the community and his brand, Fuse Prime. Things like Liquify, who are heavily involved in the sort of technical sort of growth and progress of the network. So there's been that organic growth over the past 3 years of various different people coming in and playing a role, and of course running a validator at the same time. You'll also see communities. So a lot of these real world projects that are running on the platform, you'll see them running validators as well.
Yeah, and speaking of high-profile validators, we have another one of them here with us, Mantra DAO, and Jay. And Jay, I was wondering if you could just tell us, how Mantra became a validator on Fuse and why you chose to support this network, and then maybe from a broader perspective, just give us an overview of what Mantra DAO is in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe to address why we supported Fuse to start off with, because that plays into what Robert just said, where the community basically wanted us to support the Fuse network. And a lot of the activities that we do in terms of validators that we do support comes down to what does our community want. So when they reached out to us, and there was a lot of people that were requesting that we were to provide support for Fuse, that's when we started the entire Wheels process to get the tokens and essentially have that 100,000. But then we're long on Fuse, so we have about 1 million tokens or so staked to the validator right now. The community wants it mainly because it was like an easy unstaking process. Most of them are, again, they haven't, like Rob has mentioned as well, that despite the recent market volatility, most people that are staking L1 tokens to any validator have continued to stay because these are the people that are long on these projects and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So they understand how crypto works. So that was one reason that we started off with, because the community. The other aspect was that we just found it to be a really simple and straightforward process in terms of how delegated proof of stake should be. Some of them make it slightly more complicated than others. Out here, it was that you can use a MetaMask RPC, be able to stake that directly through the staking studio out there, and be able to stake and unstake within a short period of time without having to go and learn how an entirely new blockchain works out there with like 60 different terminologies that people may never have heard of. So just from a usability perspective, it was fairly straightforward and our community wanted that. And a little bit more about our community and what Mantra DAO does is that while we started off with a DeFi suite of products, throughout our entire existence, we've not just been DeFi, we have been the entire vertical integrated DeFi suite. So one of the most critical elements of any DeFi project out there is the infrastructure, and how do you provide the ability to support various chains out there and basically allow the decentralization of various POS chains taking place. So that's what I joined these guys at Mantra DAO for, to be able to provide this facility to our users. We've started off with that. We have our DeFi suite of products. We're also building out various other elements of our ecosystem, primarily related to how we can help our users manage their keys a little bit better by providing them with an on-ramp through a slightly more institutional custodial part, which is trying to bring in new people that may not be familiar with the ecosystem, while still giving them the easy usability that they might have been used to from traditional finance. So to be able to provide that bridge between DeFi and TradFi is what we're working on right now. And one of those elements was to be able to provide our users with the ability to stake Fuse. And that's why we've been running a validator. And we've had, and I just spoke to my node operator just before hopping on this call just to get his thoughts. And he basically said that Fuse is one of the more stable networks out there. Things have been working exactly the way they're supposed to, and the documents are up to date. And if you run a validator, you know that if these things are happening, then that's like your leagues above everybody else out there. So from that perspective, I think it's been a great experience to run a validator node for Fuse in general.
Yeah, that's some great insights and words of affirmation for the Fuse network here. And for anyone watching that wants to learn more about the Fuse network, you can also visit the staking rewards site, search for Fuse, and you can view the Fuse profile and all the different validators that support Fuse network. Next question here is for Robert. So how has the Fuse network developed at the protocol level since Genesis, and what upcoming plans are there to improve the network?
Yeah, so this is an important question. We've kind of built the ecosystem and the blockchain ecosystem top down. First of all, we're in L1, but we integrate into the Ethereum ecosystem, right? We don't try and compete with Ethereum in any way. We're not like other names out there that claim to be Ethereum killers and trying to be number one in terms of building a smart contract platform. We build on the EVM standard. The EVM standard is the de facto standard for experimentation on the blockchain, has been for a number of years, and we think it will be long into the future. So for the moment, we support the EVM standard. Our approach since launching the network 3 years ago has been not necessarily to overly focus on the protocol itself, but instead to focus on building products and infrastructure that make it easy for developers to build on Fuse Network. So back in 2019 that we built the Studio zero code approach, making it really easy for people to launch community-centric payment systems on Fuse, mint a token, launch a wallet, build a sort of MVP community. More recently, our focus has switched to developers, so building API infrastructure and software essentially that once again makes it really easy and takes away a lot of the heavy lifting involved in launching payment systems. We've done pretty we had a good run of things essentially, and we've got a vision that goes long into the future. We definitely want to be in 5-10 years time. We want to be seen as having played a key role in driving mainstream adoption in crypto. And we're having a pretty good run of things, and now we've got a really good opportunity with the ecosystem growth that we're seeing to come back now to the protocol level and start looking at some of the improvements that we can be making. Some of it is low-hanging fruit, things like putting a thawing period or an unbonding period in place for the for delegators. You're going to see more proposals coming out over the next few months or so. So there's going to be a proposal about potentially increasing the block size by a small amount. There could be some changes to fees. Currently, the fees are ultra low on Fuse Network, which is great. But we might see some small increases there. A couple of reasons: it makes the network slightly more economically attractive for validators and hodlers and whatnot. It can also have some benefits in terms of sort of spam prevention, essentially. And then other things. I mean, there's lots of different discussions happening. There's discussions that are a bit more maybe long term about implementing maybe a sort of EIP 1559 type integration. So burning fees essentially, but that's a long term discussion. And there may also be a discussion about putting a max supply, but that would, once again, there's lots of work that needs to go into that. Lots of maths that needs to go into it, understanding the sort of long-term implications around inflation and whatnot. So there's multiple different discussions basically happening around both the sort of economic changes that can happen, and then also the sort of pure technical changes that can happen on the network. So one of our key focuses over the next, over the course of 2022 in particular, but just generally moving forward, is focusing more on the protocol level, essentially making the network even more attractive, both economically and technically, for developers and for token holders.
Yeah, some great insights there, and a few follow-up questions for you. So you mentioned increasing fees, so validators can more attractive for validators to validate the network. They can get more in fees, but also spam prevention. I wonder, can you tell us, is there been any incidents of spam on the network, and what is like an average transaction fee cost right now just to send Fuse back and forth?
So for a pure, to send Fuse back and forth, it's one way. It's the lowest it could possibly be. So there's room to grow. Whether we 10x or double or 5x, we're unsure, and that's a conversation to be had with the community. On the spam prevention or on the spam, I don't believe, maybe Rob can give more insight. I don't believe there's been any issues of that sort. But generally, it's there's more initiatives happening right now to look at security in general, and to look at potential exploits and future issues that we can have with the chain. And one of those things is potential spam, and therefore looking at fees and seeing if we can mitigate with the proposal there.
Yeah, it is extremely cheap to transact on Fuse Network right now. I can attest myself. I've used the network. It is smooth and just easy to use. And you mentioned about building out the economy, building out the applications or people participating in Fuse Network. Do you want to highlight any projects specifically that have kind of risen over the last year or two here?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, just briefly. One of the projects I love to talk about is People Eat. It's people, but people now, just not People Eat. I might mention Good Dollar in a second, maybe not if I've got time. But People are a sort of a Deliveroo competitor or a Uber Eats competitor. They do more than just food. But imagine if every time you'd ordered a burger or a pizza or sushi in the past 5 years or so on whatever food app you use, you've been receiving a token that has value within that what we call a community. And for us, in terms of our vision for Web3, when we look at things like Airbnb and sharing economy apps, food apps and whatnot, we see all of the people involved in making something like that work as a community, essentially. So from the delivery driver to the restaurant owner, to the developers, the marketing people, and of course the user or the customer or the person who's ordering a burger, all of these people are essentially part of a community. And People Eat have got people have got this vision to bring more wealth back into local economies. Typically, the likes of Deliveroo are taking 30% from restaurants. And the idea with People is to bring more wealth into local, or to maintain wealth in local economies by having a more community-driven approach. So the token is used to incentivize people to transact with each other within a local community, as opposed to having a sort of big tech startup building, great apps that we all love, but which aren't necessarily, conducive to strong local economies. So People Eat is a really strong project. We did there was a sort of a big story on People back in November of last year. They were supported by the UK government. And since then, there's been lots of progress. We'll do an update on People soon. There's been lots of progress because they're onboarding lots of partners in different parts of the UK, but also in different parts of Europe. So there's rapid growth happening there, and a very exciting project to watch. And I suppose another brief project that not brief, it's a big project, the biggest project on Fuse, which is Good Dollar. It's a UBI project. And they've currently got around 40,000 daily active users, according to DAP Radar. It's backed by Yoni Assia of eToro, who's also based here in Israel, where Fuse is headquartered. And they've got the ambition to become the sort of, the global universal basic income project of the future. So there's a sort of DeFi element to it, and there's also an element of providing income to people that, universal basic income or digital basic income, they're calling it, to those that need it around the world. A very exciting project to check out as well.
Yeah, definitely some impactful projects there, and I'm sure the audience watching will check those out after. I guess now we can transition to the next question here. What is the organizational structure at Fuse, and what are the key priorities of the ecosystem which you oversee, Robert?
Yeah. Good question, because up until around, I'd say, the start of this year, it was a bit of a mishmash, very product focused. Mark Smargan's a product guy. He's a sort of product visionary. And our focus has just been launching products. There's a lot happening on Fuse, even from the sort of core team, from obviously launching the network itself, to launching the studio that I was mentioning earlier, to launching the core wallet and then the different wallet implementations, to Fuse Dollar, which is the stable coin on Fuse network, to Fuse Cash, which is the sort of key wallet implementation, if you like. So lots of different products being created. We recently had some investment from Tectona, which is a publicly traded digital asset firm in Israel, where I am right now. And our plan moving forward is to be more sort of structured from an organizational perspective. So essentially, I didn't mention Voltage Finance, which is the DeFi play on Fuse, the sort of flagship DeFi play, which is also spawned out of Fuse network. So the organizational structure moving forward is Voltage Finance, which is the DeFi play, Fuse Labs, which is building infrastructure for payments and allowing developers to rapidly implement on Fuse, and then the ecosystem, or the foundation, if you like, which is permissionless, open, anyone come and build with Fuse. So various different DeFi, other sort of third-party DeFi projects are on Fuse. Sushi, for example, Beefy Finance, Rango Exchange recently came on board. Various different NFT marketplaces like Tofu and Artific, and great NFT projects like Cozy Cosmonauts and Fuse Foxes, etc. And I sort of oversee the ecosystem side of things. I'd say our core focus on the ecosystem side of things is really ensuring that, some of the things I was mentioning before, about bringing more stability, making the network even more robust, essentially, even more economically attractive. It's chicken and egg, right? The more ecosystem growth there is, the more naturally stable the network is, because the more's at stake, essentially, and vice versa. The more sort of economically attractive it is, and the more these proposals that come out, the more people want to build with us and hodl and stick around, essentially. So it's working more on that kind of stuff and really pushing forward some of these proposals to make improvements at the network level. And funding is a key priority. Developers that come into the Fuse ecosystem, they've got access to funding especially if they're very early stage and they want to build an MVP. Then they've got access to funding. There's grants and whatnot through the FuseDAO and through some of the sort of structures we're creating moving forward. They've definitely got access to funding if they want to build MVPs and sort of get a start. What a developer wants to know, if you start building in any ecosystem, but on Fuse in particular, you start getting excited about what you're building, and the first question that pops into your mind is, if this works out and things are good, are there going to be future opportunities for funding for me? We're fortunate to be backed by some of the best VCs in crypto. So at some point, over the next, we'll see 6, 9, 12 months, we're looking to build an ecosystem fund to ensure that there's not only grants, not only opportunities to take tokens public through launchpads on Fuse Network, but also opportunities to get private funding through VCs and whatnot, and ensure we've got a really strong, robust funding mechanisms on Fuse. And I say the third thing really is about growing TVL, because TVL means that money can move around the ecosystem, whether it's through lending or exchange or payments or whatever, and that creates fluidity basically in the ecosystem and sort of financial freedom in a sense.
Yeah, definitely a lot to be excited about for the Fuse ecosystem here. All the different priorities you mentioned makes me personally extremely bullish for Fuse Network over the next 6 to 12 months, short to mid-term. And you talked a lot about grant funding for developers as well. Maybe this is a good time to transition over to Rob. So what role does FuseDAO play in the overall Fuse ecosystem? And if you could name some recent governance accomplishments out of the FuseDAO.
Excuse me. So yeah, the FuseDAO, we're funded by the Fuse Foundation. So we have a grant fund of Fuse tokens, and there's 6 of us in the DAO at the moment, and we've spent the last, I suppose, 6 to 9 months kind of understanding and developing what that is. What is the DAO? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to achieve? How do we fit into the Fuse ecosystem? And that's been part of the kind of discussion that Robert's been having with the team is where do we fit in? How does the team kind of structure work? And let's not duplicate things. Let's do something separate. And so what we're doing now is the FuseDAO is focused. We're going to relaunch as a V2. We've kind of changed things around slightly. We fit quite nicely into the Fuse ecosystem now, as a fund for supporting the community and crypto kind of native projects. So as Robert talked about, and I think as Jay said, Fuse is kind of set up. One of its kind of unique things, or things that's interesting about it, is it's very simple. So the validating software and the code is very, very simple. It's a couple of lines to run a validator. Very stable, very simple piece of code. So it's easy to come on board on, yeah. And then a lot of the projects we're looking to fund and develop are real world life projects with degrees of crypto abstraction, which are very easy to onboard on. So that's kind of like the vision of Fuse is let's make it easy. Let's make this easy for people to get involved with and use, both from the kind of consumer side and from the tech side as well. So where do we fit in? So the DAO, we're looking at supporting the community as the community go out and find projects, kind of crypto native type things. So let's say most of the people on Fuse in our kind of community are kind of crypto people. They're not people out on the streets who don't know about crypto. These kind of people who are in crypto, they've got a sense of what's going on. So how do we fund and grow that kind of existing community? The kind of real world application projects are going to be handled, I think, more by the Fuse team, who are more able to support them and show them how to develop through the APIs and through the kind of tools that the Fuse labs are building. So the FuseDAO, that's what we're looking to do. So we're going to kind of open up the kind of grant process. We're going to say to the community, look, find projects you're interested in. Who do you want to come on to Fuse? We can put out a vote for the community. You can vote on that, and then we can look at funding for it as well. So a lot of the notable projects actually are quite similar to what Robert identified. So People is one we granted. We did 2 for them. People Veggie, which is a veggie kind of lifestyle app, which is within the kind of People ecosystem, and also YourGaf, which is a rental management system, which has huge potential. I mean, to streamline the whole rental management issue, and renting is going to be the future for most people. It's certainly in kind of Europe and Western Europe, you're not going to really possibly own your own home. You're going to be renting. So how do you make that a much more fluid, streamlined, relational process? And so that's what People YourGaf are trying to do within this ecosystem. So you're renting, you're getting some tokens back, you're getting a percentage of whatever your rent is back. You can spend it within the ecosystem, which will have shops and media and all types of things. So it's developing that idea of community. So we've granted that. That's ongoing at the moment. The NFT marketplaces, bridges, various things we've been involved with. And it's been good. It's a good thing. In terms of governance, the validators do the governance type things on the consensus. So the DAO really is about supporting projects. Governance is done by the validators, and that's the whole kind of proof of stake issue idea, is that if you stake on a validator, you are assigning them your voting rights for the consensus. So we have, I think Robert said there are quite a few FIPs, we call them, Fuse improvement proposals coming through, and the validators will be voting on that and passing those. So yeah.
Awesome. And thank you for the clarification as to which levels of protocol governance, community governance are handled by which entities as well. And I know we've talked a lot about Fuse, but maybe Jay, it's time to throw it back to you, a question about Mantra DAO. So maybe you could just give us some insight into all of these staking opportunities available within the Mantra DAO ecosystem. Obviously, we've talked about Mantra being a validator on Fuse Network, but there's, you guys have an app as well. Maybe just talk about all of the staking opportunities you guys have.
Absolutely. But I just want to pick up on what Rob just mentioned in terms of governance and the importance of a validator out there, which is that I imagine all delegated proof of stake chains to be like a federal government system, wherein people are allowing us to vote on proposals on their behalf. And at Mantra DAO, we take governance very seriously, because it is important that we represent the people that are delegating to our nodes and that we actually listen to our community and get back to them. So from that perspective, the types of staking that we have, the entire mantra of Mantra DAO, a little on the nose over there, is to make staking simplified. So there are 2 types of staking that we offer services for. One is dApp staking, which is specifically if you have a token that exists on a particular blockchain and you want to create a staking product with liquidity yield. We have the ability for people to be able to come and spin it up in no time at all. So there are several new projects out there that are just getting started, but require some sort of hand-holding in the initial stages. We're able to provide them with that infrastructure to be able to create an ecosystem where they can have their users come and stake their product, stake their token, and earn a yield in exchange. On the other aspect of it, we have delegated proof of stake or nominated proof of stake in the case of like Polkadot, for example, wherein we're providing users across multiple chains out there, L1s and L2s, the ability to stake their tokens to a trusted validator that takes governance seriously and listens to the community. So from Mantra DAO's perspective, we make sure that we have the entire staking gamut of products available out there covered. So from, and this is actually building up to something we're working towards right now, which is that every single protocol that we're supporting at this point in time has a slightly different way of providing staking services, which for an average non-crypto native user can be a little difficult and tedious. And the moment they hit a block, they just stop, and that's one user less that chain has. So we're working towards creating a single unified platform across all of the chains that we currently support, so that while the underlying blockchain on which you validate is going to be independent of what's going on the UI. The UI process itself, from a non-crypto native perspective, is going to be fairly straightforward. Connect your wallet, stake to a particular chain, and then that automatically redirects their delegated tokens to a validator that Mantra DAO operates. So from that perspective, it's to simplify this process, which right now can be a little difficult for a non-crypto native. And that's what we're here for at Mantra DAO, which is to not try and get a piece of the existing crypto pie, but rather to grow it using a blue ocean strategy. So if we were to do that, then we have to be able to A, educate people, and to B, make it simple. So from our staking perspective, that's what we're trying to do out here. And the rest of this year is going to be quite exciting because we've got some new stuff going on, more validators that we're operating, also more institutions that are interested in this space. So that's who we would be looking towards, and essentially moving the conversation from a crypto native perspective to a larger global conversation that's taking place and how people can get involved going forward.
Yeah, and I think your focus on making staking as simple as possible is really what makes you a good match to support the Fuse network here. You guys have similar goals in just making it accessible to the everyday person. I guess now, Robert, we can talk a little bit about liquid staking. Obviously, we see Lido, Metapool we just had on our show on Monday that it provides a liquid staking mirror product. Is there any plans for a liquid staking product to be developed on Fuse?
It's an important subject, and it's something we're very keen to do. We're looking for the right partner essentially to do it with. Obviously, the benefits of liquid staking, so it's clear for everybody, is that you can not only be staking your Fuse and be getting the rewards from doing so, but then that stake essentially can be turned into a receipt, right? A token that can be used as collateral elsewhere. So it would be hugely beneficial for the DeFi ecosystem on Fuse to have that collateral used for lending and other sort of collateralized DeFi applications. So hugely beneficial. We have been speaking to multiple partners, and as soon as we have more news, we'll provide that. But yeah, it's something we're looking to do. It's in the works.
Very cool. We'll keep our eyes peeled for further announcements on that front there. And this next question is for Jay, but I mean, I think anyone could feel free to provide their input as well. So APR is really a function of inflation, engaged balance, block time, a few other factors, but we're seeing a lot of 100%, 50% APRs, APYs can get even higher with compounding. So Jay, how sustainable are these type of high APYs in the long term?
Okay. I think in terms of sustainable APYs, it depends on two things, in my opinion. One is how many users there are out there. And the second is what are the tokenomics of the ecosystem? Because a sustainable APY on one particular blockchain or a dApp doesn't necessarily need to be executed in a similar way on anything else out there. So for example, I mean, I'm taking hypotheticals out here just because this is a slightly vast concept and I don't want to get too bogged down by the details. But for example, if we're looking at a blockchain out there that funds all of their community rewards or the APRs on the basis of usage of that blockchain, then obviously the APR is going to be a function of how many people are using it. So the more people that you have using it, that means that you have the ability to sustain it over a period of time. Whereas if you have a dApp out there that is just trying to bootstrap or trying to ride the hype train and is dumping a ton of their tokens right up front just to attract the mercenary capital, then obviously that is going to last for a fixed period of time. And once the rewards are done, then the mercenary capital moves on, and then that turns into a zombie version of the project that started out to be. So long story short, I think it depends on the tokenomics of the ecosystem that we're working on. But yeah, I mean, that's just how I see it. I'm sure there are people out there that disagree with me, but that's the beauty of crypto. So happy to have that.
Yeah, and then we currently see around just around sub 20% APR on the Fuse network for staking. Maybe Rob or Robert, you guys could provide some insight. So that's completely funded by engaged balance and inflation at this point, block rewards, right? Now, is that schedule set to come down over time, or is there governance decisions that can be made in the future to kind of limit the emissions of new coins into the circulating supply?
Yes, yeah. So all of the staking rewards come from network inflation. It runs at 5%. The 5% was kind of chosen at the beginning of the blockchain at the kind of genesis period, and it's been constantly discussed as to what the correct level is or what the right level is, and we've had these kind of discussions on and off over the years. It is a balance, so you can't take it in isolation. So if you look at staking, it's kind of the most secure thing you can do on a network. You're staking your tokens. You're getting an APR. It's very low risk. Okay, so you want to balance the kind of the APR you get from staking with the other kind of opportunities you have on the network as well. So if there are kind of lending protocols paying 30% or 40%, that's good. They're slightly more risky. Okay, what you don't want is a network their staking is the biggest APR out there, because everyone's going to stake. There's no opportunity for any other kind of DApp or project to kind of come in and get any kind of value out of the tokens, the Fuse tokens. So you've got to balance that. You've also got to balance the fact that validators have to earn an income. It costs money to run a validator, costs time and things like that. So they've got to earn an income. And you also want enough stake that you secure the network as well. So you're going to go balance all those types of things. With Fuse, because the gas price is so low, validators don't make essentially any money on transaction volume. So there's that. I think Robert identified that there's a FIP in process to 10x the gas price to hopefully increase a little bit of revenue through the validators to the validators from that. So I think we are at the moment thinking about reducing the network inflation rate to slightly at the moment, just to kind of drop it down slightly. It's running now for the average delegator around about 18%. If you run a validator, you get about 20%. The reason being is if you delegate 15% of your rewards go to the validator as a fee. So it works out about 1.5% APR goes to the validator, which some people say is a lot. It doesn't actually work out to be a lot because most validators don't have a lot of Fuse delegated to them, and I think it's a reasonable fee for people to pay for the service of validating. So yes, we are looking to reduce that. Again, it is a community discussion. The last time we had this, it was a very long discussion, a lot of pushback, a lot of kind of people saying, no, we shouldn't do it now. And we didn't, we're going to listen to the community on those types of things. When and if it goes ahead, it will be within the context of the whole ecosystem and balancing other opportunities on the ecosystem, making sure things kind of work out, that validating is still a profitable thing to do. It's got to pay its way, and it's still attractive. So yes, it kind of ties into the kind of tokenomics in terms of the max supply that is another kind of option that we're kind of thinking about. At the moment, there is no max supply on Fuse. Setting a max supply can firm the token price and can give some kind of final stability to where the kind of tokenomics lie. That again is up for discussion. It hasn't really been kind of confirmed or anything like that. But yeah, how the inflation slowly drops down to reach a max supply, what it looks like, whether we drop off slowly and then sharply, whether we halve like Bitcoin or something like that. Those kind of ideas are being talked about.
Yeah, and it's also interesting. Robert mentioned earlier potentially proposing something to burn Fuse from transaction fees. That's another way to help reduce inflation as well. And getting into another controversial macro topic here. So what do you guys think? We can start with Robert here. Just the impact of the ETH 2.0 upgrade on all alt POS layer ones. What do you think the impact is going to be?
Not huge. It's an exciting upgrade. I think everyone's generally excited about the upcoming merge. It's been in the pipeline for a long time. So first of all, excited to see whether it happens in August or maybe September, as planned. I think it's pretty clear within the Ethereum ecosystem, but in terms of our view is multi-chain, right? We have a sort of multi-chain view of things. We build on the EVM standard because we benefit from the network effect of the most used blockchain standard out there. I don't see any huge impact. I see a sort of multi-chain future. We're bridged to, we've got multiple strong bridges to Ethereum and other networks. Binance Smart Chain. There are certain bridges that will allow you to go to Avalanche, to put to Polygon, etc. So I'm not necessarily seeing any sort of huge change when it comes to other L1s. right now. But let's see. I think that listening to sort of key individuals within the Ethereum ecosystem, I think we generally have the same view. We're a sidechain essentially, and sidechains are ultra important for the Ethereum ecosystem. In the long term, we're important for the continued growth essentially, and to also take on some of the to help tackle some of the congestion issues that we're seeing on Ethereum. Ethereum 2.0 is not going to solve from one day to the next the congestion issues. It's a stepping stone that helps solve multiple things. Of course, staking Ethereum to proof of stake in particular, but there's a huge need for block space, and therefore a huge need for ecosystems like Fuse Network long into the future.
Yeah, and Rob or Jay, did you guys have any other comments on that?
I think it's going to
just say. Oh, sorry, Rob. Go ahead.
Okay, I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to smooth the multi-chain world, because one of the major issues we have in the community is that bridge fees are just ridiculous if you're trying to go onto or off of Ethereum, and so we can reduce that. Then value is going to move so much smoother around the ecosystem. It's also going to hopefully kind of open and expand the kind of Ethereum ecosystem to new users as well, and I think more blockchain adoption, the better for everyone, really. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I'm quite excited as someone that runs validators in general to have one of the largest blockchains out there, at least by a number of users, move to proof of stake, because that lends further credence to the fact that proof of stake is the way forward in terms of sustainability and just allowing for an ecosystem to grow more organically. And I think Ethereum potentially turns into a security layer, whereas L2s out there or anyone leveraging the security of Ethereum turns into the transaction layer, where it's easier for people to transact and rather than be bogged down by high gas fees and low speeds, essentially. So whenever that does happen, we don't know when, if that's going to happen this year, but I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, definitely still TBD on a date there, and hopefully it does happen this year. But interesting thoughts from the panel here. Didn't even think about the potential of bridge transaction costs going down, so it could actually increase usage on other networks like Fuse, for example. Okay, so thank you for the community for listening. We have some questions from the community, and the first one, very simple question here from David. So any of you guys can take this. What are the advantages of Fuse in general?
Maybe I should take it. It's a very simple answer. Payments, basically. I mean, that's it. It's our focus. It sounds boring for some people. It's not. There's all the the amazing things that are happening out there, whether it's metaverse and NFTs and DeFi and whatnot. All these things are happening on Fuse because the technology is compatible with these kind of technologies. Bitcoin, 12 years ago, came out with a white paper talking about payments. It requires lots of discipline, essentially. There's anyone listening to this talk right now, there's a 90% chance that just today they probably made a payment for something, right? They probably went out and got a coffee or whatever it might be. There's less chance that they've played a game. There's less chance that they have bought an NFT or traded on an exchange or whatever, but there's a very strong chance they've done a payment of some sort today. And therefore, maybe it seems, it might not be clear what the how hugely impactful this stuff is, but payments are our big focus. At some point over the next, I'm not going to give a timeline on it, but in a close timeline, but in the next sort of quarter or so, we'll announce the launch of a new product, which is Fuse Charge. Those people out there that know fintech quite well and know companies like Stripe, for example, will understand the sort of implications of this kind of product. We see payments, in the technological people think, oh, you just send money to somebody, like that's a payment, but it's not quite the case. From a user experience perspective, there's so much more that goes into providing a nice, smooth payments experience. When you think of e-commerce and the ease with which you can put your credit card details, lots going into the background there. The ability with Revolut, for example, to send a payment link to someone for them to pay immediately with their credit card. Or to do a direct QR code transaction, things like this. They require a lot more than just having a blockchain and a wallet. Essentially, there's lots of robust sort of APIs and software that goes into making these things, and it's our core focus. And we believe that is the key to mainstream adoption. Payments. When we look at things like the delivery of the people project I was talking about earlier, and things like Flambeau, for example, which is a sharing economy project, and things like Mystic Valley, or the different events being done by Bitazza, the festivals and whatnot that they've done on Fuse Network, or the payment system for festivals. There's often a lot more happening with these apps, but payments are often at the core of what they're of the sort of the key. The key technology behind lots of these applications. So payments is the key advantage to Fuse. It's what we're focused on, and it's what we believe to be the key to mainstream adoption of blockchain technology.
Yeah, very well said there. And we have one more community question here, and if anyone else has another community question, feel free to ask it. We can try to squeeze it in. This is almost similar to the first one, but from Abhishek, we have, what is Fuse doing that is new and isn't being done in any other blockchain?
Maybe for me again, but it's a different, I suppose, yeah, it is similar to the first one. What are we doing that's not being done elsewhere? I would talk about the culture, essentially. Rob explained earlier where Mark came from, Mark Smargan, Kolu, who, Kolu were doing local currencies. They did the Israeli shekel. They did the Liverpool pound. Liverpool being a city in the UK. We're playing a big, important Champions League game this weekend, just so that everyone's aware. Against Real Madrid. They did the Bristol. Was it Bristol or Brixton? Was it Bristol, Rob? It was Bristol pound, wasn't it?
They did one in East London. Yeah,
the Brixton. Yeah, they did the Brixton pound. And there's a lot of sentiment that goes into this. It comes from the idea that, if you spend a pound or a dollar at a chain store or Walmart or a Tesco's or a Carrefour, depending on where you are, then typically 10 cents will stay with the local economy. If you spend a dollar or a pound at a local store, typically 30, 40 cents will stay within the local economy. And it's life-changing, essentially, for people. That's one benefit. Another benefit is, the more we can take these technologies to people that haven't previously had access to it, the more we can increase transactional flow. We can create create opportunities that didn't exist previously, and create more economic activity, and essentially improve the lives of everyday people. So it's the culture, basically, is what we're trying to do with this technology. All the fun stuff that you can do elsewhere in other ecosystems and other blockchains that exist on Fuse, whether it's gaming or NFTs or DeFi, or if you like enterprise applications, supply chain, etc., are also possible on Fuse. But we once again, I'll say it again, payments essentially we believe to be the key to a lot of things, and notably improving lives.
Yeah. I'll just add in quickly. I completely agree with that. I think it's not what we're doing differently; it's how we're positioned, and it's that idea of crypto abstraction, engaging people who aren't crypto native, usable real life projects. Benefiting real people in the real world. Good dollars, one aspect of that. People and all these type of projects as well. And then at the same time, giving crypto native people something to do on Fuse Chain as well. Because once you've engaged with an abstracted app, you might want to think, oh, actually, how do I then kind of engage in crypto from a kind of crypto perspective? And so we're kind of growing that wider ecosystem as well. But really, it's payments. It's the kind of position of Fuse, the ethos of Fuse, and what we're trying to achieve as a whole ecosystem. So that's I think the kind of the key thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. The culture at Fuse is community, and I can definitely feel that coming through from the answers you guys provided here today. So thank you so much for your time participating here. Again, we have Robert, Rob, and Jay. And can you guys just give the audience the best way for us to follow you and listen, get the latest developments at Fuse, Fuse Prime, FuseDAO, and Mantra DAO?
You can follow me on Twitter, Fuse at FusePrime1. I'm also in the Telegram chats as well. You can just @ me at FusePrime in Telegram. That's the best way.
I'm personally most present on LinkedIn, actually, coming from a sort of enterprise background. So if you search for Robert Miller Fuse, I'm sure you'll find me. I am also on Twitter, so Rob_Miller87. And if you want to get in contact via Telegram, then Rob Miller, ROBMILLER on Telegram, you'll find me there.
And if you want to reach out to anybody at Mantra DAO, then all you need to do is at Mantra DAO on Twitter or our official Telegram chat. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Telegram, and all other social media out there. So happy to reach out. You can reach out to me on Telegram, though, if you're crypto native, at JayantBR. So JAYANTBR.
Awesome. Thank you for that, guys. Okay, in closing, to everyone watching, please hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And we do have a podcast, a weekly podcast that comes out on Mondays called Staking Mondays, and that's available as well on YouTube and Spotify. All right, guys, for Robert, Rob, and Jay, I'm Ken. As always, happy staking. Take care.